Hello, FedPhoenix fam. So, I am often asked by people, what did you do, right? Why did you go to prison? And I typically evade this particular question. And when I was incarcerated, I would just say nonviolent victimless drug offense. Leave it at that. But I evade this question because, in all honesty, because one, I mean, obviously it's not a situation I'm proud of by any means. But more importantly, there were some things that went on that I can't openly discuss. I feel like if I was a person in a different economic bracket, much different, like if I hit the lotto and I could afford to move myself and the family members that I assist to a completely different state, far away, I would then probably be comfortable speaking my full truth, but I can't. So, and I know that if I were to speak my full truth, there would potentially be some retaliation from not from regular people, but from, we'll say, law enforcement / court entities. And these are people that my experience has made very clear that if they decide that they want me to go to prison for any reason, I'm inconvenient, I'm a liability. If someone close to me is they want to harm them, and for any reason they decide I want to go to prison, there will be a charge. There will be a case of sorts, and it's either going to be the easy way or the hard way, but I'm going to go to prison. That's a lesson I learned very, very much through my experience. So I'm going to give you a very general explanation as to why I went to prison. And the reality is there's probably going to be some questions because I can't be completely transparent on a lot of things. And I'm not going to be able to address that. I'm just not. So, in this video, any questions that ask me to elaborate anything in the comments, I'm not responding to, because again, that creates a risk that I can't afford to take. So I'll tell you what I can comfortably tell you. I'll tell you what is public record. So here we go. And mind you, on the federal level, there's a thing called PACER, where you can actually make an account. It's a website, pacer.gov, and look at court documents pertaining to literally anybody's federal, criminal case. So feel free to go on Pacer if you'd like and confirm everything I'm saying. If I had my paperwork more organized, I would be showing receipts as I make this video. But I don't, so here we go. So I had a friend, and I use the term relatively loosely. I had a friend, and this is someone who I'd known for many years, someone who I trusted, someone who had a key to my house, because if this person was drinking and driving, or, had been drinking locally, or if they were perhaps, driving and tired, I wanted them to come to my house and go to sleep on the couch, and I trusted 100% that was fine. And it was, that in itself is all good and well. So this person had a key to my house, right? Because there were some small reasons why they should, and there was really no reason why they shouldn't. And I'm not a person that would willy-nilly give out keys to their home. So, that really speaks to the significance of the amount of trust, we'll just say, that I had with this person, or this person had with me. So this individual there is no may or may not. This individual was selling narcotics. Now, I felt like, and did I know that? I mean, honestly, it was something I chose to not give much thought to. It was something that this person and I never discussed. I didn't want to be part of that. And I was, under the impression that they didn't want me to be part of that, as a safety measure. And that was wonderful. And I knew that there was a chance that this person at some point would go back to prison because they'd been to prison previously for selling narcotics as well. Um, and it just was what it was. I would encourage them to do certain things, get your CDL, and then you can, save up and start a shipping company and whatever, but ultimately grown folks are going to do what they want to do. And when people make life choices that aren't what you want for them or what you believe is in their best interest, you have two choices. You can either cut ties, be bothered by it to that extent, or you can maintain ties and just whatever it is they're doing that you don't think is ideal, you just don't have any association with that, right? So with that in mind, this particular friend had sent me a text message, and all this is in court record, so I'm not saying anything that is not, available to the public. But it sent me a text message and said, hey, what's your address? Now, I knew this meant, because they know how to get to my house, obviously. This meant that they were going to, get a package sent to my house. Was this package going to be a car part, something from Amazon? I don't know. And I really wasn't concerned about it at all. It never crossed my mind that I need to be concerned. And so I send them my address, and a package comes a few days later, and it has my name on it, obviously, in case somebody has to sign for it, because this person did not live with me. But I knew it was their package, so I took a picture of the outside of the package, sent it to them, and said, hey, your package is here. And they said, oh, okay, I'll be by to get it in a couple of days. Everything is fine. At this point, I'm a single parent with 2 children, and I was a member of my Elks Lodge, which was a joy and a blessing. I was involved with my neighborhood watch because, certain things were important to me, like us having more perimeter lighting that's solar powered. So when the power goes out in our neighborhood, we're less likely to be targeted by persons who may seek to break into our homes, things of that nature. I knew my neighbors. I thought we were all friends, or friendly and that kind of thing. So a couple nights later, me and my children are sleeping. And my door gets kicked in. Ultimately, with the facts that became apparent at that point were a person who was associated with my friend had got caught in a traffic stop with some drugs. And this person had turned my friend, like turned against them and gave the authorities all their phone numbers and whatever. And what also became known at that point to me and, to the public via the media and court documents is apparently my friend had ordered a kilo, over 2 pounds, of heroin to be sent to him at my address. And because these phones were tapped because of his associate that had, snitched on him to save himself, the feds, everybody knew all this was happening. All these moving parts were happening unbeknownst to me. And when my door got kicked in, it all kind of, became the reality. And when this happened, they had my house apparently under surveillance, waiting for him to come get his package, to kick in the door to get him with the package in his possession, because apparently the authorities were building a case against him. And he told them at this time, he said, hey, she don't know nothing. She's not involved. Leave her out of it. They said, nope, she's going with you. So then I was arrested right along with him. And I was arrested at that time by the state of West Virginia for conspiracy to distribute. I think it was just distribute drugs. It may have been heroin. I can't remember. And I sat in regional jail for 10 days. So my bond got dropped to 10%. And then I got out. Then I spent a year and a half on bond. A year and a half. And finally, after a year and a half, once you've been arrested in West Virginia on a felony drug charge, the state has a year and a half to make a case, to indict you. After a year and a half, my lawyer informed me that they had gotten and they were mailing to me that the state had dismissed all charges against me because, and I quote, there was no evidence nor witnesses to implicate that I had knowingly committed any crime. And in addition to that, the other party at this point had been sentenced in the federal court system. And Because when they kicked in my door, they kicked in several doors at the same time in connection to this person. But it also mentioned in my state dismissal letter that the other party had reiterated even at their sentencing that I was not involved. I knew nothing. So I thought it was done, right? Now, I can't fill in some blanks here for you. So, unfortunately, you're going to have to connect the dots the best you can. I'm going to have to let you do that, right or wrong. But what I will say is after my state charges were dropped, and I was like, thank God this is over, because I spent a year and a half, how are my parents going to, how are they going to be okay? Why and when I'm incarcerated? Am I going to go do a decade in prison? Like, what about my kids? Like all these things were finally, in my mind, put to rest. 3 months after the state dropped charges, I get a federal target letter. Then I get a lawyer, right? Because once you get a target letter, you can get a lawyer because now you have documentation that it says you are the target of a federal investigation. It doesn't tell you what they're investigating, doesn't tell you if you're the only one. It's very vague, very vague. But at that point, I did a little research and I realized at that point you're entitled to counsel. So I immediately went down to the federal courthouse and got a public defender. And the public defender, of course, was like, wanted me to kind of give him a rundown of what was going on. I told him, again, there's some things I can't mention. And I'm nobody in the grand scheme of things, or even in relevance to this whole scenario. However, someone who is somebody, there were people that were upset with how things played out for someone else. They felt this other person was shown too much leniency in their sentencing. And this person, or persons, I'll keep it as vague as I can, wanted to basically harm them beyond the sentence they'd already got. And it was assumed that me and the friend were closer than what we really were, that harming me would harm them inadvertently. Or maybe this person also maybe thought that I was some kind of, I don't know, actual criminal that was just smart enough to not have witnesses or evidence, which, how are you committing crimes and no one knows? I mean, come on, be for real. But either way, it was determined by a person who has the ability to do this that I needed to go to prison, pretty much. For whatever reason. I'll leave that wide open. And this person has work-related ties that have the power to kind of make this happen, to kind of line this up. So I go to the lawyer, and I, of course, am emphatic. I did nothing. The other party, because it's only me and this other party in relevance to me in this whole situation, will verify that I did. Has many, many times on record. And the lawyer says to me, and of course I didn't know at the time that the closeness that this particular public defender had with certain court officers of such. But it was like, well, if you think someone is targeting you, right, is picking you to go to prison wrongfully, and they obviously have enough power to or have friends with enough power to get you hit with the federal target letter, do you not think that someone with that amount of power, if they don't get what they want, doesn't have the ability to also pull the strings to get you hit with the federal indictment? Or if this Fed thing goes away, do you think, especially not having the resources to just up and relocate myself and everyone who depends upon me, he said, do you really think that this person also would be above potentially creating a state case that could cost you decades of your freedom? Do you think getting rid of these federal charges, fighting them, and if you win, do you think you're not going to just piss them off more? And I said, well, what do I do? Right? And the lawyer said, you're going to prison. It's that simple. You have about 3 choices. You can tell me, as your lawyer, that you're willing to plead out, because this is, I'm sure, going to be a drug-related situation, to a low-level federal drug crime. I'll talk to the prosecutor. You've never been to prison. There's literally no evidence against you in all reality at this point. Not that they can't make a case. Um, and you'll do 5 years or less in federal prison. Option number two, you stand on your innocence, and the feds have a endless budget, bottomless resources to do what they want and to convince 12 jurors of whatever it is they want to convince them of. You make them make a case against you. They indict you. It will be probably for conspiracy to distribute. And, if we're lucky, we'll get a plea deal for 10 years in federal prison. And you're not going to beat the Fed. And the third potential way this plays out is you fight it, you beat the federal, the Fed thing goes away, whatever. Just ignore the target letter, and maybe they don't come up with, an indictment, and that doesn't lead to a trial and all this. But then, it's quite likely at some point I will be driving my son to school or whatever, and if things, my lawyers, if things are the way that I believe them to be, and I'll get pulled over randomly, and God knows what will magically appear in my trunk, and then I can go do a decade, 2 or 3 decades in state level prison. They said, you're going to prison. That's pretty much an inevitable reality. Once you got that target letter, that became your reality. Now you have to be smart and decide, is it more important for you to stand on you're innocent and you did nothing? Is it more important to argue that, and at what cost? Or are you willing to just kind of bow down, lay down, take it, and obviously it's been determined you're going to prison, just go to frickin' prison and get it done so you can move on with your life. I chose the go to prison and move on with my life. Voluntarily, pretty much. And I know that sounds insane, probably to a lot of you. And if you're not a person with limited resources, if you're not a person who caregives, who has people they take care of that they can't afford to relocate out of harm's way, that may make no sense in the world to you. And that's okay. But this is my situation. So the lawyer gets a hold of me after he talks to the prosecutor and says, okay, they're going to charge you with the charge using a communications facility to facilitate a drug trafficking offense. I've never heard of this in my life. And I'm like, what in the hell is that? And he said, essentially, you're going to be saying, your plea deal is you're going to plead guilty. You're going to say that, even though you weren't involved in anything, you could have easily deduced that your associate was, in fact, involved in narcotic sales. And with that information, that was, even though you stuck your head in the sand, apparent, you also could have deduced that the package that was coming to your home potentially contained drugs. And so basically you assisted, by inaction, for lack of a better term. And I said, okay. And I know that sounds crazy to you. It sounded crazy to me at the time. But when I was faced with the options I was faced with and the circumstances I was faced with, and mind you, at this point, it had been over a year and a half of constant stress, constant, holy crap, am I going to prison? And trying to prepare my loved ones for that. And so at this point, I'm also mentally and emotionally just beat down to a freaking pulp. Like it would be arguable to say that I was in no position to even make that kind of decision. But I said, okay. So the plea deal is for up to 4 years of prison, followed by 1 year supervised release, which, by the way, with the feds, it's extremely rare that anyone only gets a year of supervised release. That in and of itself pretty much tells you that a person either did nothing or there was no case, or both. Just saying. And I've dealt with a lot of people going through the federal system, so I can say that with confidence. But anyway, so right before we go into the plea hearing, right, because now a plea hearing is set, my lawyer hands me a document. He says, you need to read this, get familiar with it. What is this? This is the statement of a law enforcement person that's dated 6 months, by the way, after I was arrested, interviewed, and that whole thing. Dated 6 months later. But it's a statement of a law enforcement entity who said that this is what I said when I was arrested. And this statement says that alleges that I had said, oh yeah, I knew it was going on, and I just turned a blind eye and let it happen. And and the lawyer said to me, no matter what your reality was before you got this target letter, once you go into this courtroom to take a plea deal, whatever it is that you're pleading guilty to, whatever you're saying you've done, that becomes your reality for the rest of your life. Because that is always what everyone will believe, and that is what you're going to be sentenced upon. So we go into the plea hearing. I read this document. We go into the plea hearing. Interestingly, my judge, very smart guy, the longest sitting federal judge in the country, Judge Copenhaver. He was appointed by President Ford, by the way. And you would think a man of his age would be, like, oh man, this is scary. But actually, I was shocked to see that he is incredibly, incredibly mentally sharp, very sharp guy. So as we go in here, and the judge, goes through the formalities of reading what the charges are, and, the plea deal that I'd signed, that, okay, sure, I could have deduced, but I turned a blind eye and therefore was complicit in that way. And then the prosecutor gingerly informs the judge, oh yeah, and here's evidence against her, because, there was none. And the evidence, of course, is this statement that's dated 6 months after I was actually, interviewed. And so the judge asked the prosecutor, and this is all in court documents, so I can speak on this freely. The judge asked the prosecutor, he said, I want to see the audio video of Miss Thompson giving this confession. Prosecutor says, hold on, confers with his person sitting with him. It says, actually, the equipment wasn't working when she gave this. And the judge says, well, I notice it's dated 6 months after her arrest. And the prosecutor needs to confer again with the person sitting with him. And says, oh, well, it was, the paperwork was kind of done late, amongst all the other and paperwork with the obvious, more significant people in this situation. Once that was done, then this got done. And the judge said, okay. The judge said, well, I at least want to hear the audio of Miss Thompson giving this statement. They confer again. There is no audio. The audio equipment, there was no record. The judge said there wasn't a working tape recorder in the entire, police station. They confer, nope, afraid not. So, okay. The judge said, all right, so I want to see Miss Thompson's handwritten confession. I understand this is probably the typed version of her confession. Where's her confession, her actual written confession, or even a typed one that she has signed around the time of her arrest? They confer again. Oh, there is none. Miss Thompson never wrote or signed a statement, and admitting any guilt or any knowledge of anything. The judge says to me, he says, I'm going to give you a chance here. Even though you already signed the plea deal and you already agreed that you did this, I will give you an opportunity at this point to rescind that, to take that back. And we will end this right now. This, as far as you, basically voluntarily taking a criminal charge. The judge said, I'm willing to do that. And again, I know a lot of things. There's a lot going on here that I can't say. So I said, no, Your Honor, I want to, I did turn a blind eye to what this other party was doing. And because of that, I hold responsibility. The judge said, are you sure you want to do this? And I really, more than anything, wanted to speak my truth in that moment. But I knew what would come of that. So I said, yeah, this is what I want to do. And the judge said, well, I can assure you that in this case, there will be no upward departure at sentencing. And he actually kind of looked at the prosecutor when he said this, but he was referring to me. Upward departures are very common in the Fed, as are sometimes downward departures, which means that you are sentenced either above or below the guidelines and or plea deal due to extenuating circumstances. But he said there will not be an upward departure in this case. Basically, I don't have to worry about getting beyond the plea deal. And so the judge said, all right. He said, in your own words, tell me what you did. And I stuck to the script. So then they set my sentencing hearing. And at my sentencing hearing, the prosecutor brings up, which of course in between the plea hearing and the sentencing hearing, my PSI was done. And I had gotten into some trouble with the law. Never been to prison, nothing of that nature. But I got into some trouble with the law over 20 years prior, right? When I had a very different life. And the prosecutor's really kind of playing this up at prosecution. And saying, at my sentencing hearing, and saying, she's probably a lifetime criminal. This is just the only time we've really, got her, And my lawyer is saying, federal probation has confirmed that she's not a threat to her community. And in fact, she's an asset to her community. Therefore, they are not opposed to me being sentenced to probation. No prison time, just probation, which almost never happens with federal cases. And the judge said, okay. Now, mind you, this 2 pounds, this kilo of heroin, was later tested by the feds before the other party was sentenced. And apparently there was a notable amount of fentanyl in it. So now this kilo was being classified as a kilo of fentanyl by the courts. So the judge at this point says, you know what? Prosecution wants 4 years. That's the maximum of the plea deal. Defense wants probation. He said, because of the type and the quantity of drugs involved in the situation, I cannot not sentence you to some period of prison time. He said, so I'm going to split the difference. You're going to get 2 years. 24 months, federal prison, 1 year of paper. And as you guys know, I went to prison. And I should have been home in 6 months on CARES because that was the height of the COVID and I have health issues. Should have been home without CARES. 14 months maxed out with the FSA credits I earned in my good time. I came home in 16 months. So take with that information what you will. And like I said, there's a lot being left out because I do not want to be retaliated against. My loved ones can't afford for me to go back to prison. So, and honestly, I'm nervous about even putting this on YouTube. It makes me leery, but I'm going to roll the dice and do it. And I hope I don't regret it. And I find solace in the fact that if this begins to feel bad, I can just take it down. So having said that, that's why I went to prison. What I said in open court, what I, at my plea deal, said that I did, was I could have deduced what another person was doing. And I chose to turn a blind eye to that. And in my choosing to turn a blind eye, I was complicit in their conduct. So, and after I was sentenced, the federal prosecutor made a statement to the local media saying that I was given 2 years in prison, federal prison, for, this is what he says. And again, you can look this up on Pacer and actually see the documentation to confirm what I'm saying. But he said, oh, she got 2 years in federal prison. She was sentenced 2 years in federal prison for allowing multiple drug, I think he said multiple fentanyl maybe even, but multiple drug packages to be delivered to her home in assistance to this drug dealer. So much I want to say that I can't. So fucking much. But I would take it to my grave with me unless my economic status changes dramatically at some point in life. And I can be comfortable really speaking freely. But at this point, I know I can't. I know that would be real bad. So take what you will. Assume what you will. I can't clear anything up in the comments. And I'm sorry for that. If you want to confirm anything I said, it's public record. Go on Pacer. Google me. Look up, I'm pretty sure that when my state charges were dismissed, that document, that court document is public record. By all means, please go read it. Because when you look at the documentation and the verification of what I'm saying, you're going to be going, there's more to this than what is being said. It becomes very apparent. And again, if certain people ever see this video, I would take to my grave what I've not said. So I'm not a problem, and I'm not gonna make myself one. You win, I lose. My Cash App and PayPal will be in the description if you'd like to donate to the channel, as will be my email if you need to get a hold of me for any reason, a link to the merch line. I'm working on my first book. I will keep you all